Hello, my name is Mira Czarnecka, and I would like to welcome you to my lecture today titled Translating Sites, a case study within the framework of EPISTRAN. The EPISTRAN project was launched in 2023 at the Center for English Translation and Anglo-Portuguese Studies at Nova University of Lisbon, Portugal. The current presentation employs a new concept of inter-epistemic translation developed under the framework of the EPISTRAN project, with the particular understanding of translation as the translation of the physical aspects of surroundings into knowledge. The tenets of this new venue in translation studies have been laid out by Karen Bennett in the article Epistemic Translation Towards an Ecology of Knowledges. The author traces the origins of this new category of translation to Douglas Robinson's Translationality, Essays in the Translational Medical Humanities, and the scholar's proposal to extend the famous Roman Jakobson's tripartite division of translation into intralingual, interlingual, and intersemiotic, with inter-epistemic translation. What is meant by this term is translation connecting different knowledge systems, being a transfer or transmission of knowledge between different written genres or semiotic worlds in the process of narrative reframing. Translation, then, is no longer seen as a merely interlingual process, but as a dynamic concept, named by Douglas Robinson translationality, offering the opportunities to explain how things change through the modeling of the new upon the old. This transdisciplinary concept can be used to undo the epistemological divides that have produced cognitive inequality in the world. Inter-epistemic translation then becomes a heuristic tool in areas of study outside its traditional scope, as well as a weapon of emancipation, able to bring about real change in the world. In translation sites, Sherry Simon describes the story of today's Lviv, Ukrainian, which in the past had been called Leopolis, Italian, Lember, German and Yiddish, Lwów, Polish, and Lwów, Russian. As a consequence of World War II, Jewish population of the city was exterminated, and the strip of Polish land, including the city of Lwów, was annexed by the Soviet Union. The native inhabitants were forced to leave the city and the new country, while the new population of the city was formed out of former dwellers of surrounding rural areas and people from eastern Ukraine and the Soviet Union. The city, which had been an important academic and cultural center in Poland, significantly lost its character. As Sherry Simon argues, the new citizens of Lviv have little connection with the historical fabric of the city and its memories. The urban roots are very shallow, and their knowledge of the city and its past is inevitably partial. As Ukrainian is the major language of the city now, with some speaking Russian, the author asks whether the memories of Yiddish, Polish, or German can be claimed and shared by those whose link with the past is simply that of urban citizenship. The Space of Synagogues is a monument opened in 2016, enclosing traces of 3 synagogues destroyed during the Second World War. Its central place is formed by a row of 39 stone tablets. imprinted with images of shops and houses from pre-war Lviv, or quotations from former residents. Each quotation is in its original language and accompanied by English, Hebrew, and Ukrainian translations. In that way, memories as well as the past are recovered and brought into the present world. The double injustice of appropriation, as argued by Sherry Simon, of not only the physical space of belonging, but also of the right to memorialization having been taken away, is in that partially atoned for. The community of those who are the holders of memory is being enlarged by new owners of the place who become participants. Today, I would like to draw the listener's attention to the history inscribed in the sites of my hometown, situated in the southeast of Poland, Dębica, which survived the turbulent times to reveal at the end of the communist era to its citizen, a child in the third generation of eyewitnesses, a vacuum of history. Remaining in the sphere of the influence of the Soviet Union did not involve the imposition of another language, but the distortion of reality, the robbing of history, so that no connection to the towns and the country's past could be retrieved. That is why the discussion in the article will center around the translation of absence, the term used by Sherry Simon in her book. I will talk about a few selected places from my hometown, whose blunt looks exemplified the non-history in the years of socialism, and which now look different, testifying to the true past, and also triggering inquiries into the history of other buildings still neglected or whose true story cannot be recovered. For illustration, I will use the photos of those places from different moments in the history. In the discussion, I will also draw on the work of David Lowenthal, who in the past is a foreign country revisited, writes about the interrelation of memory and history, how messages from another time recall people who have been expelled, annihilated, and how history, being a translation of reality, can be manipulated in the attempt to erase memory. David Lowenthal, in the past is a foreign country, discusses, among others, history and memory. He calls them two different routes to the past. While considering the role and significance of both, Lowenthal argues that history is deeply reliant on memory. At the same time, he claims memories disappear with their holders, but histories outlive their authors. Archival records preserve them. Still, written history may be denied if it supersedes or conflicts with collective memory. In the Epistemologies of the South, Justice Against Epistemicide, Boaventura de Sousa Santos maintains that the destruction of knowledge is not an epistemological artifact without consequences. It involves the destruction of the social practices and the disqualification of the social agents that operate according to such knowledges. As a result of the partitioning of Poland by Russia, Austria, and Prussia in 1795, Poland ceased to exist as a country for over 120 years. The revival of the state independence in 1918 lasted only until 1939. World War II in 1939 caused the re-erasure of the Polish statehood from the political map and the division of its lands and inhabitants between the Third Reich and the Soviet Union. Although the end of the World War II in 1945 resulted in re-establishing the Polish state, the country's sovereignty was limited as it was subject to full control of the Soviet Union. Only the 1989-1990 events triggered the rebirth of the full sovereignty of Poland, which returned to its previous name of the Polish Republic. In this map, you can see Dębica marked with a red spot here. Dębica was granted city rights in the second half of the 14th century. Between the years 1676 and 1690, there occurred a great influx of Jews to the town. In 1772, Dębica became part of the Austrian Empire. Among the well-known Polish aristocratic names associated with the place were Radziwiłł and Raczyński families. In 1856, a railway was laid to Dębica. The building of a railway junction on the route between Kraków-Lwów and Dębica-Tarnobrzeg has been a major event in the city's development. A dozen months of a very intense industrialization of Dębica as part of the construction of Central Industrial District, Centralny Okręg Przemysłowy, marked the end of an interwar period. The project involved building several large-scale industrial factories in the southeastern part of the current Poland, with a view mainly to reduce unemployment. The achievements were not totally undone by the destruction caused by World War II. At the beginning of 1938, the number of inhabitants in Dębica equaled 13,500. In January 1946, following the end of World War II, the number was reduced to 9,924. Out of that, only 9 persons were Jewish, compared to estimated 2,000 before the outbreak of war. It is approximated that as a result of military operations staged in Dębica during the war, 40% of its buildings were destroyed. Today, Dębica is the seat of the Dębica County, and its population as of December 2021 equaled 44,692. After 1945, Poland was subjected to Soviet occupation and colonial dependency, which involved, among others, the forcible dislocation of population from the east to the west. The official name of the country was changed from the Republic of Poland to the Polish People's Republic, PRL. Land and castles, manors, etc., belonging to members of aristocracy or landed gentry, were nationalized, which meant that they were taken over by the state, władza ludowa, and converted to serve various public functions. They became, for example, hospitals, seats of administration, and court. Many aristocrats from the area of Dębica fled to Kraków where they found employment and means of earning a living. These were the factual results of Poland coming into the sphere of the influence of the Soviet Union. The sociological consequences were even more far-reaching and disastrous. The endeavor to explicate them has been undertaken by Eva Thompson in the article Ways of Remembering the Case of Poland. The author argues that the repercussions were twofold. Firstly, Poles were not allowed to cultivate memory of the events of World War II, as it stayed in opposition to the narration of liberation and friendship which the Soviet oppressor wanted to impose. Between 1939 and 1989, there was no freedom to remember in Poland. This resulted in the manipulation or destruction of communal memories, instrumental in identity forming. Without the freedom to remember, we lose our ability to put events in perspective and to understand the present state of the world. Secondly, the history of Poland and of other countries, collectively referred to as Eastern Europe, was excluded from standard histories of Europe and remains largely unacknowledged in European and American memory. Without this, it is impossible to achieve closure and to move on. The sites of memory in Dębica, in the sense as defined by Sherry Simon, are numerous. They are, for example, the traces of the Jewish community which thrived in Dębica for close to 300 years, such as the synagogue or the Jewish cemetery, Kirkut, residence of Polish aristocracy and landowners, and the monuments. Today, due to time limitations, I will focus on the selected ones related only to Raczyński family. The history of Raczyński family in the land of Dębica starts in 1819 when Anna Radziwiłł married Atanazy Raczyński, bringing in her dowry Zawada and adjacent lands, including parts of Dębica. Count Edward Bernard Raczyński inherited the property in 1926 upon the death of his father, Edward Alexander Raczyński. The new owner felt responsible for the well-being of the town. He created a town park on his own land. He ceded to the town 2 pieces of land on which a stadium and a vocational school were built. He also sold to the city at a very competitive price the land on which the tire factory Stomil, as part of the industrial development of the city, was erected. He also supported an existing grammar school, Gymnasium. The beginnings of the residence in Zawada date back to the 17th century. In the photo taken in 1905, you can see the castle as extended and modernized by Atanazy Raczyński. The castle had been burned down by the Soviet troops during World War I. Count Edward Raczyński decided not to reconstruct the castle in Zawada, but instead he built a manor in the colonial style to please his young English wife, Lady Joyce Markham Raczyński. The new place was a special favorite with her. She liked to spend her time there, and she was remembered by the people of Dębica as a good lady. She died at the age of 28 and was buried according to her will in London. Still, the next wife of the Count, Cecilia née Jaroszyńska, and his 3 daughters, as well as the friends and family, used to spend their summer holidays in Zawada, leaving it for the last time just a few days before the German invasion of Poland. Aware of the nearing war, the Count took some measures to especially preserve precious manuscripts, the library and paintings kept in various family places in Poland. He also tried to secure the manor in Zawada. However, all his efforts failed in the face of the approaching doom. Following World War II, in 1945, the manor in Zawada was taken over by the new Polish state, and a state agricultural farm, in Polish Państwowe Gospodarstwo Rolne, or PGR, was created on its grounds. State agricultural farms were a form of collective farming in the Polish People's Republic. Relatively inefficient and subsidized by the government, they went bankrupt quickly after the fall of communism and adoption of a market economy by Poland. The then new state owner built housing and farming units, a stadium, and stables on the land belonging to the manor. In the years 1956-57, a renovation of the remains of the old castle, as well as of the original fence, was carried out. In the mid-1990s, the property was bought at a nominal price by a private person under the condition of further maintenance, upon approval of conservator restorer. Unfortunately, the land and the manor are gradually falling into decline, and although some efforts have been made by the local authorities to rectify the problem, so far they have not brought a breakthrough. The manor or the land do not in any way testify to the last owner, Count Edward Raczyński. Within the premises of the parish cemetery in Dębica, there stands a neo-Gothic chapel, which for many years has been a place where services preceding burials were held. It has been anonymous, and the burial crypt at its back has been closed. In our times, one can read about it in Wikipedia. The entry created in 2011 informs that the chapel was built in 1880 and that it houses the remains of Anna Elżbieta Raczyńska, née Radziwiłł, her son Karol Edward Raczyński, and her daughter-in-law Karolina Oettingen-Wallerstein. The chapel has been closed for some time now, as it requires renovation, and the requiems are now held in a different place. The local authorities have announced on the 6th of July 2021 that following a meeting with Viridiana Ray, Count Edward Raczyński's daughter, the family has agreed to cede to the town the rights to the building. This opens up the possibility to apply for necessary funding to carry out the renovation. Another building in Dębica, which used to belong to Raczyński family, was the Summer Palace. You can see it in the photo. For many years, following World War II, it has served various public functions. For example, it housed the seat of the district court in Dębica. After the seat of the court had been moved some time ago to a new building, the building has just acquired a new private owner. However, the renovation work has not been started yet. Wilusz Villa was erected in 1904 by Kazimierz Wilusz, a public notary and the then administrator of Raczyński family lands and estates. After Wilusz's death in 1919, the property was bought probably around 1922-23 by a Jewish entrepreneur, Tobiasz Zucker. Upon the end of World War II, the building was taken over by the state and it served various public utility functions. It was a seat of court, public notary, land register office, bailiff, and militia. The court moved out of the building in 1999. In 2000, the villa was leased to Renata Nagawiecka, who became its owner in 2005, and then carried out the renovation of the property. Today, Villa Wiluszówka is in private hands and serves as a guest house. On the 26th of May 2001, a primary school in Zawada, operating close to the former Raczyński Manor in Zawada, took as its patron Edward Raczyński. Iridianna Rej and Katarzyna Raczyńska, the Count's daughters, attended the ceremony. A commemorative plaque was placed at the entrance to the school. Another commemorative plaque was placed on the on the wall of the vocational school in Dębica in 2019. It commemorates Edward Bernard Raczyński as a donor of land on which the school was built and the former president of Poland. Włodzimierz Skarbek-Borowski was the administrator of the estate in Nagawczyna, owned by Edward Raczyński. In 1936, Count Raczyński ceded to Dębica a piece of land to create a town park. Before the outbreak of World War II, City Council in Dębica took on a formal obligation to name the main alley in the park after Włodzimierz Skarbek-Borowski. The entire park was to be dedicated to the late Lady Joyce Markham Raczyńska. The plaque, which you can see in the photo, was placed in the park in 2021. It commemorates Count Edward Raczyński, his first wife, Lady Joyce Markham Raczyński, and Włodzimierz Skarbek-Borowski, the administrator of Raczyński family estate. The park was dedicated to Włodzimierz Skarbek-Borowski in 2004. In the discussion today, I employed the new concept of inter-epistemic translation with an individual understanding of translation as the translation of the physical aspects of surroundings into knowledge. Using the concepts of translation as the main determinant of our epoch, I was able to argue that at each of the described stages in the history of Dębica, the sites testifying to the facts and betraying the reasons behind the acts told a different story which could be appropriately interpreted, translated by an eyewitness. As such, they were always speaking the truth. And then bibliography. And now I would like to thank for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my lecture. Thank you.